G'day guys, up next I've got Mark Groves. Mark is going to take us through probably the best feature for developers in Visual Studio 2012. You're going to see how you can review someone else's code and give them actionable feedback. So let's take a look. G'day guys, today I've got Mark Groves from the Visual Studio Ultimate team. Great. So can we start off a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So work-wise, I'm the group program manager for Visual Studio Ultimate.
Yep.
And before joining Microsoft, I've been here about 6 years.
Yep.
I was a lead architect at an ISV and mostly focused on financial services.
Was that during the .com boom?
A little post bubble.
Okay.
Before that, I did do a lot of startups. So I've been kind of a little bit of everywhere. But that last company, I did 100% Microsoft and was actually a TAP customer for TFS 2005. So that's kind of how I got my little in here. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And personally?
Personally, probably I have a wife and 2 children, little kids, and my hobby is photography.
Awesome. Okay. So when you joined Microsoft, did you go straight to the TFS Visual Studio team?
I did join Microsoft in the Visual Studio team. It was originally the architecture tools. So I worked on what used to be called Whitehorse for my first release, and then kind of evolved that to working on the UML tools, some of the architectural dependency diagrams, and then in this release, additionally to working on the architecture tools, I'm also working on a bunch of developer productivity capabilities. So what we're calling my work, code review, also responsible for some of the IntelliTrace stuff we'll talk to Larry about later.
All right, awesome. So you want to kick it off and show us my work? Sure,
absolutely. So just kind of set it up here. One of the things that we're very aware of is that developers get interrupted all day long. You know, if it's not an interview someone's coming to do, or you're definitely going to get new requests coming in to go look at something. It might be a code review from another colleague or an email that came in. You're going to get interrupted a lot. And we can't necessarily stop those interruptions, but what we wanted to focus on was the ability so that when those interruptions happen, how do you quickly get back to the work you were doing before?
Right,
so,
okay.
As you spoke with Aaron before, one of the things we're doing is a big push in the Agile tooling, and from the team perspective, the TFS team is doing Agile planning and backlogs and everything like that. Well, what we wanted to do on the My Work side is bring that information that is focused on the developer into the IDE. So we have this new, if you go in from the Team Explorer.
So can I just back up
Sure.
a second? So when we get an interruption, one way is to open up a second instance of Visual Studio, kind of.
Sure.
Is this solving that problem?
It is solving that problem, because what we're doing when you get that interruption, you want to switch work, we package up all the changes that you're currently working on and put those away, and keep all your state, your debugger state, everything like that, so that whenever you want to get back to that, it just all gets rehydrated and back to where you're at.
Perfect.
So,
how many dialogues do I have to say okay to?
I think none.
Oh, really?
Let's test that though. Let's see what this build is. So I have an instance of TFS running on this machine with a little demo app running. If I switch to the My Work page, you'll see that. So there's a few sections here. I have the in progress section, which is basically the task I'm working on. So I already have a task in here. Add requested tickets to the customer. I can also, let me add a few more work items in here real quick. Oh, I know what I need.
Nice new UI there.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you made one of those fields bigger.
So if I go back to the My Work tab, you'll see we now have basically every task that is on my backlog, my personal backlog. And if I go in here, and so this is a work item.
Right. Yep.
You'll notice that work items now from this view open up in what we internally call the Provisional Tab.
On the right-hand side.
Yeah, so what we were noticing, you'll see this tab showing up in a lot of cases around Visual Studio, and this is another thing of keeping you focused. For example, when you're debugging, if you're doing any deep debugging, you're getting a lot of files opened, right? most of those files you don't need when you're done with your debugging, but your IDE is still cluttered with all this information. So this provisional tab is really kind of to help solve that. We have this basically a more browser-based metaphor where every time you open something, things open up in that tab. So for example, if I open up this additional work item, it's opened on that tab. So I don't clutter my IDE with a bunch of tasks or a bunch of tabs that I have to close down. I can go back and open it and keeps everything clean. So if I had a full IDE, if I had my whole
all the normal files open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just trying this over here. So as I'm working on this add request, as I'm doing changes, we're paying attention to what you're doing.
Right.
So every file that I open, every file that I change, you'll see that these things will start making changes here. So now we have 3 edits. I can go in and view those changes in the new pending changes window.
Right.
So I get a lot more details of what's going on here. No another tool window that you have to close and manage. But as this work is going on, we're paying attention to all these changes. So if I open up a few more files, make a few more random changes, we're keeping track of this. And now say that this test demo work item is something I need to go do right now. My boss has just come in and asked me to change that. What I can easily do is suspend the work that I'm doing. I can put in a custom name here for me to remember, or I can just leave it the default as the work item.
Add requested tickets on the customer view.
That was the name of the work I was doing.
Right, okay.
So now what we're doing is you're starting with the work instead of, previously in 2010 and past, you usually started with changes. And then at the end, if you were really mature, you would actually associate the work items with the work you did.
That's right.
Now we're just saying up front, what's the work you're doing? Just like you're doing in your planning board meetings, right? Your stand-up meetings. Here's the work I'm doing.
Yep.
And now we're paying attention to what you're doing,
right,
to keep those things tracked together.
So Mark, one small thing with that UI, I really like how you've got a button for the action and the cancel is just the hyperlink. I wish that was in lots of other places in the UI. It makes it much clearer.
We've been trying to be a lot more consistent on these new kind of hub models that we're doing. So if I suspend this, I just get a save dialog in this case. And what we're doing in the background here is shelving up all those changes, putting those away in TFS, cleaning up your workspace. So now you're fresh.
Right.
So now you can go and make another change without having any impact to the work that you're already doing.
Right, that's really nice. So you've basically brought shelving into mainstream. Because it was hidden
without actually having to manage it, which is the important part.
You didn't even know you were shelving, did you?
No. You don't really need to know that that's a concept.
So when you have unless someone knew to do that, I'm thinking about the basic Mort. When he closes down Visual Studio with a whole lot of things, it'd be awesome to have that. What do you call it? My work.
Just the active work.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to have that somewhere outside that UI.
Yeah, so we've been brainstorming a bunch of ideas, and Andrew, who happens to be the cameraman today, is PMing this whole area, and he's come up with some really interesting ideas of making the start page in VS much more actionable,
right,
and putting this information in front of you. But I'm sure we'll come up with more ways of making that much more relevant.
Yeah, it almost should be in the file menu somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Anyway.
So of course I can start this other task, and so assume I did that and check that in. But as you can see, I have this suspended work here. So if I want to get back to this, all I need to do is basically resume this work.
Oh, right.
I can also, if I wanted to, resume it I can merge changes together if needed. Say I was working on a bug fix, and then I realized another bug fix was related. I can merge those together, right, without having to start over.
Okay.
But if I just resume this now, what you'll notice is we'll unshelf these changes. We will also open up all the windows that you had open.
Exactly.
Yeah, all the windows are open. And then also any breakpoints that were set, we'll set all that. So you can basically get back to where so for example, this edit.cshtml was the last document that I was in. We open that back up.
And if I was to close it all down without doing that now, is you got a history? Could I maybe go back to one of the ones that I was last at?
So one of the ideas that we have that we don't have necessarily plans to implement yet is taking snapshots.
Right.
So as along during the day, if you're making changes and you say, I'm not sure this is going to be the right way, I'm going to take a snapshot, try something else, and get along. It's basically what you can do today in shelf sets, but managing it similarly how we're managing this for you, kind of getting that shelf set management a lot more easier to deal with.
Does this metaphor exist in anything else? Like when you got in Word and when you got a lot open, or Excel?
Well, I think that you get some of it in maybe jump lists on the start menu. You have the idea of like the previous files that I had open, things like that. But I don't know that there's a whole lot inside of Microsoft products that have done not only what you're doing, like have a context of what you're doing, in this case, work, along with, for example, what you're trying to change in the source control model.
Yeah.
Right? So
the best thing I can think of, which isn't even close, is in IE you can open the previous set of tabs you had open.
Sure. In
the tools menu, or in Windows Explorer, it's got reopen last Windows at logon, but that's pretty invisible too.
Absolutely.
So did you get any inspiration for this feature from products you've used?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really where we started from an inspiration is we know that people's memories, they just can't hold that much in, right? And particularly when you get interrupted, and who knows how long that interruption could be. It could be days, if not weeks. And then you did a bunch of research, you made some changes, but to get your mind back to where you were making that change could take a significant amount of time to reorient yourself. One of the ideas that we're thinking about, although we don't have it in the product yet, is you're also doing research while you're doing this code. You may be doing on Stack or a bunch of different websites. What if we started collecting that information too? Also, right? And capture that in there.
That was the next thing I was going to say. It'd be awesome if I could also save all the tabs I have with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And other apps.
See, we need you in.
Yes. Snag it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So is that my work done?
So pretty much, yeah. So from here, you can obviously check in. The other thing that we've added in this release is the ability to send out a code review.
Right.
So
this is awesome.
Yeah, I know you love code review, which we really appreciate. The thing that we want the developers to stay in the zone, and we also want them to be able to collaborate with their coworkers. And here we're really used to dealing with very distributed teams. For example, this team alone has people in the UK and Shanghai, IDC. We always
in India.
In India, yeah, exactly. So being able to share this information of what you changed out to a lot of people is really valuable, and that direct collaboration is important. So to be able to send out a code review request, basically send out the request. I'm asked who I want to send it to, so just send it to. I can add multiple reviewers. I can describe.
Can it be just an email address?
Right now, no. It has to be someone in TFS.
Right.
Because what we're going to do is actually create a work item behind the scenes to manage this thing, to handle all the comments in the change set. I can add a comment.
Right. So you've done some code. You're iffy on it.
Yeah.
And you want to.
I want to get some feedback on it. Exactly. So I can submit that request out. So now I'm looking at it. I'm still looking at this from my perspective. So I can see here on my work page, this is kind of my dashboard for what's going on. I can see that I've requested Andrew to take this code review. Yeah, actually not, but yes. Right. And what state it's in. But if I can just open this code review. Say for this example, we switch to kind of Andrew's view on this. But I can open this up, and now I get kind of the requester's view of the world. What's important here is that we focused on the people that are doing the code review requests for you. That's not really their work. I mean, they're helping you out by doing a code review. So we wanted to make it so that people could get into a code review, get quickly to the changes that are needed, provide some feedback, and then get back out and back to their work, right? Because just like we were talking about earlier, we want to keep people working on their stuff. So if we go in here, we can see that they can go and look at the change set, but more easily they can just see, here are all the files. I can see that I made a comment here. As I open up each file, you'll see our new diff experience inside of Visual Studio.
Wow, that's much nicer.
So no external diff tool really necessary. Of course, you can plug them in. I can go in and add a comment directly from here, and that will add, I can say, looks good, or come see me. And now I can send this feedback quickly back to me. So if I go back to the My Work page, so Andrew never had to unshelf anything. He had to mess up his workspace.
No.
He's able to just get the changes.
So you're just sending a diff file.
Just sending in the diff file.
The normal format of a diff file with plus and minus.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any viewer can
any
use
viewer can see it.
Okay.
So now I can see here that it's been requested, and from here I can go see all the comments, make the changes, and go in and finish out my code review and check it in. Which we really wanted to kind of streamline that process. So then
Can you go back to Andrew's view and just do that again? Just had a small comment there for you.
Sure.
So when you make a comment, so when you made a comment before,
Yep.
So open up one of the files, and you make a comment. That OK button, that should be a button. Rather, if you're going to keep with the same experience
Sure.
as before.
We're still doing a lot of cleanup on the UI.
Oh, awesome. So did you get inspiration from this one from Word at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked to the Word team quite extensively and kind of where they're going, not just Word, but all of Office, and trying to get a consistent, because the majority of the files that you're going to work with in code review are code files, that very similar to the Word experience. But we also wanted to get inspiration from them on how they deal with Excel and PowerPoint that are, they're not text structured documents, right? So being working on the architecture team, a lot of things that we want people to send around is architecture documents. Well, those aren't, you can't just walk up to those and write a comment in an inline, right? So we wanted this consistent view over here where each file, no matter the format, it could be an icon, but you can still add comments to it even though you couldn't just right click in the middle of a text file, for example.
Right, okay, cool. All right, so what else have you got to show us?
So I can definitely show you
The
some of the
architecture?
architecture stuff.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
So a major investment that we did in this release around the architecture tools was making it so that the new, we needed the ability to load our dependency graphs to get larger solutions. So if you're familiar at all with the 2010 product, we had this ability to generate dependency graphs. And in 2010,
And when does someone do that?
when they want to understand the overall architecture.
So in a brownfield situation?
Yes, absolutely. So we're really aware that people have to reuse their assets, right? They're not always starting new software. So getting an understanding of what's going on in their existing software is really important. So this tool is really aligned up to help people get a picture of how that existing software works. So as they evolve it, they can keep that in mind.
So while that's generating, I've never seen that taking too long link before. What's going to happen when I click on that?
So that'll take you some documentation that we have related to tuning the solution to help with that. There's several examples of how to, if you have a really large solution,
Yes.
for example, like Visual Studio. Visual
Yes.
Studio, as you can imagine, doesn't necessarily fit in memory inside of Visual Studio. We have some tools to be able to do things from the command line to generate these graphs out as far as a build system or something like that. So if you have a really large code base,
You can call the command line like on an overnight process.
Yeah, exactly.
So that next time you open it's slightly faster.
exactly.
Oh, nice.
And so one of the major investments we did here, though, to keep this really highly scalable was to make it so that we put a database cache behind this. So previously in 2010, every time you did something, you created this graph, every single element was loaded in the memory.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, the larger solution, bigger problem, right? What we're doing now is we're only loading the top nodes into memory. So what you're seeing here is our assembly view. So each one of these essentially is assembly in this fictional application. But
is this our new sample, Fabricam?
Fabricam, yes, Fabricam Fiber.
Does that take over Tailspin?
I think so.
Right. Okay.
Brian Color now. But each one of these, as I expand through here, we're running a query into the database to find out, in this case, what namespaces are in there. So I can quickly I'm only paying the memory price for the things that I expand into.
Right.
And what's kind of more important, although we haven't really fully leveraged this yet, is now that we have this database with all this dependency information, it's a full SQL database behind the scenes.
I can write queries and find out something interesting you haven't thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this show menu here, and this is actually an extension point that we're working on to make it so that you can write your own extensions to go get more data, to filter the data down, to do kind of interesting queries that we're not even sure.
So you could potentially have a third-party vendor who writes their own UI on top of that database and maybe tells you what patterns you're using or something cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. We haven't necessarily determined exactly how that API is going to work yet, but something that's what we've been thinking about.
Gee, that's going to be cool.
So as you can see, each one of these, if I get down to the class level, I can start seeing what relationships I have and get a better image of what's going on. As I mentioned before, our theme of what my team's working on really is keeping those developers in the zone. So not only are these big pictures graphs really important to developers and architects, but that same level of information is also over here in the Solution Explorer. So in this release, we enabled to take this dependency information and make that visible over in the Solution Explorer. So as you expand out, you'll start seeing that I have the classes and method information right here. So I can start asking questions like, what does this contain? What are the base types for this? And repivot the Solution Explorer with this data. So now you're seeing kind of two views of that same underlying information. So if I'm making a major edit, I can have this information kind of pinned over here in the Solution Explorer, or I can bring up a graph and see the visual representation. Because depending on the problem, sometimes the visuals help. Other times you just want to see a list of things.
Right. So can you sync these views back and forth?
Not currently.
Right. Is that something you've thought of?
Oh, yes.
Oh. Okay. So can I ask you, assuming you had even more resources at your disposal, what are some of the things that you would have loved to nail in the future?
Well, I think I want to keep going down this line of developer collaboration and developer enablement right there. So, when I showed you the code review experience previously, it's kind of a coarse grain enactment, right? I'd love to see us be able to interact more dynamically. So instead of using Link, Skype, other ways people are interacting, instead of me sending a full code review to someone to ask a question, maybe I can just spin up inside of Visual Studio and get them on whatever IM client they're using and be able to share a snippet of code or whatever the problem is, get that interaction quickly, and then get back to my work. Right? So
now you've bought Skype, you've got some more opportunities, don't you?
Oh, I guess we're in process of that, yes.
Awesome. So I might ask you a few other questions before we finish up. You manage a number of guys here, you've got a whole team at your disposal. Tell me some of the things that are important to you, like during your reviews, maybe some of the things you mention to them or when they start working for you, some of the things that are important for you and some of the things you don't like.
Sure. And Andrew can attest to this because he's new to the team. Being a program manager is kind of a amorphous job.
Amorphous job?
Yeah, just there's not really one definition of what exactly you do. You're really trying to fill in and fit into whatever the team needs to execute and ship, right? So we're the customer representative, right? So in the Agile sense, we are the product owner in many cases, right? So I think that what I really like is when program managers are able to come in and say, even though what they're doing today is on their commitments and everything, they're willing to sacrifice that for the customer. If they learn new information, they're the first one to come in and argue that they should be cutting their feature. As I've told many of my reports, I know you've made it when you start telling me you're the most passionately arguing why we shouldn't be doing this, we should be doing something else.
Oh, right. So not just keep on your pure metrics of what you were asked to do and did you deliver them. Wow, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, and as far as what I asked them not to do is kind of the reverse of that is, straight line, you gave me X feature, I'm going to deliver it even if the data or the customer information has changed because that was on my commitments or on my review. And that to me isn't very agile, and it's absolutely not what we need to be delivering our customers.
Awesome. Any other books or speakers or something else that's had some influence on you?
Sure. So recently I read Chip Heath's Made to Stick.
Say it again.
Chip Heath, he's an author.
Yeah.
He is a book called Made to Stick.
Made to Stick, all right.
And basically the concept of the book is how some ideas stick and some things just go away, right? And you never remember them again. There's millions of products out there that were there for a couple months, but you forget about them. They may have got a bunch of press, but how do you take concepts that be really successful? I don't know, it's a pretty inspirational book.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Mark. It was awesome.
Great, thanks.
And until next time, this is Adam Kogan signing off. Before you go, I've got a task for you. Go to tv.ssw.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll be informed of all upcoming videos. In addition, if you're super keen, I'm all about inspecting and adapting. So send me an email or send me a tweet @Adam Kogan. Cheers.